Good evening, everyone. My name is Jesse Molman. I'm the Assistant Business Administrator for the Township of Milburn. Just going to wait a few more minutes for Fawn McGee, who's the Director of the Blue Acres Program with the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, to hop on, and I'll pass the baton over to him. We'll just give it a few more minutes. Hi, everyone. My name is Jesse Molman. I'm the Assistant Business Administrator for the Township of Milburn. We're pleased to have Fawn McGee providing information session for us all on the Blue Acres program. They're the Director of Blue Acres in the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. I'm bringing her on as a panelist, and the minute she's on, we'll get going.
Testing, testing. Anybody there?
Yes, I can hear you, Fawn. Are you in as a panelist? Yes.
I believe so.
Okay, great. I will.
Okay, it says I can't start video because the host has stopped it. I just say okay.
Let's see, I think. Oh, here we go. Make co-host. Yes.
Will I be able to share screen?
Yes, you should be able to.
Okay. So I'll just say okay.
You should be a co-host now. Yeah, perfect.
All right, bravo. Thank you. All right, are we all set to go?
I think we're all set.
Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. I hope you can see me okay. My daughter's practicing piano, so I had to find a corner of the house where it was a little quieter to get to you guys. I've been invited by the administration to speak to you and give you a little background knowledge on the Blue Acres program. So I did put a very short PowerPoint presentation together. So bear with me. Can you see that?
I cannot.
And that this is a different format than I'm used to. Let me see.
Do you see the share screen button at the bottom?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I saw that. I don't see my PowerPoint presentation as a option, though. All right, well, this isn't working out the way I thought. Well, maybe you guys won't get a presentation. Maybe you'll just get my voice if I can't seem to pull that up. I don't want to.
You want to forward it to my email and I'll try and share it?
Do that. Should I send it to Alex or should I send it to you?
You can send it to me. So I'll give you my email. So
Go ahead.
JMoehlman at Milburn, MILLBURN, TWP.org.
Okay. Okay, it's on its way. All right, do we know how many folks are on?
Yes, we have about 33.
All right, well, just some background. I'm Fawn McGee. I'm the director of the Blue Acres program that's housed in the Department of Environmental Protection. And I oversee basically a real estate office for the department. Blue Acres is actually under the Green Acres umbrella. So I'm not sure if any of you have ever heard of the Green Acres program, but I'm also the chief of state land acquisition there. So in essence, I oversee a conservation real estate office. And we've done some FEMA grants in the past. When Sandy came along, we volunteered to handle the buyout so that local governments didn't have to take care of putting their towns back together, deal with writing grants, and then implementing a buyout program and coming up with a 25% non-federal match share. We have dollars coming in from residents such as yourself that allow us to collect. Now our permanent source of funding is from corporate business tax. And so we utilize that to pay the match to the federal government. It allows us to leverage our state dollars and do a lot more work. You can move on to the next slide, if you would, please. All right, and there you go. There's our mission. So the Blue Acres component of Green Acres is really just to provide an opportunity for folks to get out of harm's way that live in the floodplain, the AE zones, the X zones, or even folks that are hit by a disaster like Ida. You know, we're finding that some of these storms are starting to affect people even outside of these flood zones. And so anyone that is flood prone is the way we gauge it, because some of it is science and FEMA mapping, and others it's just the reality of too much rain falling. You can move on to the next slide. And, you know, this is just, you know, we're a densely populated state, the most densely populated in the nation, and we're also flood prone. We've had over 50 presidential disaster declarations since the 50s and over 1,000 flood events. You've seen what Ida did just recently, which is our next presidential disaster declaration. So in New Jersey, we've recognized a pattern, and this program is really just one of the many mitigation tools in the toolbox. Next, please. This is actually the result of a buyout and demolition of a repetitively flooded community in Somerset County. For the life of me, I don't know why, but in the red circle is a mailbox that was left. So all the demo was completed. The houses were bought, knocked away. You can see all the ornamental trees and what would have been, and even the daffodils there on the side of the picture in the bottom right-hand corner. But this is the result of what's going to happen once a buyout is complete. It doesn't mean the rain's going to stop. It just means that families aren't impacted and don't have to get the mud out of their homes, pay their insurance deductible, and continue to live in these repetitively flooded communities. Next slide, please. Our criteria is simple. You need to be flood damage or in a flood prone area. A cluster of homes. I know that Alex had mentioned that was a question that folks had. And strategically, a cluster could be the 5 houses on the back end of a cul-de-sac that back up to a wetland complex, or it could be you know, a main thoroughfare of a street, River Road, for instance. We see a lot that happens. It's the first or second street directly adjacent to a tidally flown creek or river. And so it really is just an impacted area. What we're trying to do at the state level, I mean, local governments can apply for grants, counties can apply for grants. The state's job is a more regional approach to flood mitigation. And so clusters for us means enough homes together to create flood storage for the remaining neighbors that live in the community. So we never want to go in and just wipe out and buy up a whole community and erase that. What we want to do is work with the local government to recognize areas that are repetitively flooded. And if we can strategically pull those homes out of the floodplain and create flood storage, that should enhance and provide protection for the rest of the neighbors in the neighborhood. And so that's what we're trying to accomplish with clusters. Has to make sense. We're applying to the federal government when we write these grants, and so it has to be cost effective. It has to meet FEMA's benefit cost analysis, and so there is science and engineering that goes into making sure that we're creating enough flood storage that it makes sense for the federal government to provide us with funding to do the buyouts and the demolitions. You can see some of the other things. What FEMA wants to see is that we are taking properties that are in the special flood hazard area and that they have national flood insurance. And then we're removing those families and those homes off of the insurance claims rolls. So that is a huge part of what FEMA is asking. As I mentioned, FEMA's requirement is a benefit cost analysis calculation On the HUD side, the national objective would be a low mod income or an urgent need as a result of a disaster. And so either one of those would come into play. I should mention that as a result of Ida, they're still doing damage assessments. We have no idea how much money is going to come in from Congress. The money and the effect of that storm was from Louisiana all the way up, beyond us. So Congress will determine how much money they're going to give to that disaster. That will be separated and divvied out by the states. And then once New Jersey gets its amount, the administration will determine which types of mitigation projects will get how much money. So right now, this is just kind of informational on what we do, but ultimately HUD or FEMA would likely be the two disaster funds that we will attempt to bring into New Jersey as a result of the damage from Ida. Next slide, please. And this just, some background. This program is in place really to alleviate a lot of the burden from the local government officials. We do from the GIS mapping, adding the storm surge or inundation layers to the affected properties. We get applications from families so we can see what the general need is and want is from the residents and the community. We look at the National Flood Insurance information, whether or not properties were substantially damaged. If these properties back up onto open space, that's also beneficial to us as a conservation buyer. We will buy a cluster that might be a little smaller, like I said, not just because it backs up on a wetland complex, but it may expand or become an addition to an open space. All of these properties, because the state is funding them, funding a non-federal match, writing the grant and running the implementation of the real estate transaction and the demolition, they become state assets. We do work with the towns and ask that they sign a memorandum of understanding to manage those sites for us. And so that's the one charge we ask from the local governments. Next slide, please. And this is just some general information about the benefits to the community. We want to reduce the amount of emergency service costs to the town. And so by moving those homes out of harm's way, we're providing more safety to the emergency service staff. It's resilience. We're allowing, there to be flood storage areas created in the area where we know the water continues to go. And we're creating what we call passive recreation. So once those homes are demolished, it's a green space. The towns can choose to let it go through succession. They can manage it as a wetland complex. And so whatever future use or what you would like that property to look at, we work with the local officials to meet that goal once all the homes are demolished. Next slide, please. And these are some of the benefits to the individuals. Obviously moving out of harm's way and not dealing with the repetitive nature of the storms that we're dealing with. The valuation that we do is if your property, say, was impacted by Ida, instead of valuing your property at current market value, we do something called a pre-storm value. And that basically asks the appraiser to look at the size, square footage, the bedrooms, bathrooms, the condition of the roof, those types of things, attached, detached garage, to determine the actual market value of your home. We do not do assessed value. Assessed value represents a community need for the tax base to function for your libraries and your trash and all those other things. So we are dealing with individual properties. And so we do an appraisal uniquely for each house, each family. And once that appraisal is completed at pre-storm value, we actually provide that appraisal to the homeowner so they can actually see the sales that we were comparing their property to. We're not a real estate agent. We're a conservation buyer. So there's no realty transfer fee, no gross income tax, the sale of the property, and you don't have to worry about the commission to a realtor. So there's definitely a cost savings for coming into the program. We don't ask you to fix your property up if you don't want to. You don't have to stage it. We're looking to buy your home because it floods. And so we don't want you to spend any more time or money than you want to before we come in and would buy it and knock it down. Next slide, please. And these are just, some of these slides, I pulled this from another presentation that I had given. So these are just some of the types of maps that we do where we show where the applications are coming in, where we've already done the buyouts. It shows some of the inundation and some of the flood zone areas to kind of show the types of projects that we're dealing with. And the pictures below are just showing you how close in proximity some of the properties are that we're buying. They're near, you can see they're near streams. Sometimes they seem to be semi-elevated. It's still not enough. And a lot of people in some of our areas that were impacted from Sandy actually would gut the first floor of their homes out and live on the second floor until they did the buyout because they couldn't afford to live somewhere else, and they didn't want to sell their home to another family that would end up being flooded in the future. Next slide, please. This is just another community. So we, these are most of our buyouts have been riparian, tidally flown riparian areas, inland areas, not so much on the coast except down in the Delaware Bay Shore area. But there's usually some kind of surface water that is flowing, or an oxbow in a river, where when the water gets, the velocity of the water gets to be too much, it's just coming straight through and it's hitting these neighborhoods that are, I guess, basically in the wrong place. Next slide, please.
Yeah, and I'm just going to interject for one moment. So there was an unattended conflict with another meeting taking place on this account at 7 p.m. So everyone, please check your email inboxes. There's going to be another link sending out in the next minute or two, because we probably will be kicked off. But everyone who registered for the meeting will get a link to that, and we'll restart it once that happens.
Okay. How much time do we have before 7? Because this is almost done.
Yeah, let's go another couple minutes, and then we'll switch to that next link.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm sharing the steps in the process, not because that's where we are with you, but just so you understand. We still don't have federal dollars. So first we need to get the money. Then we have to write grants for the families that are chosen and that meet cost effectiveness. And then we do something that's called a kickoff. And at that kickoff, that's a meeting exclusively for the families that are approved by the federal government in a grant. And those approvals are by address. So if we do 9 properties or 10 properties or 25 properties on a street, and that grant is done or in process, and then somebody else comes along, it's too late. The grant process takes us at least 3 months. It's a tremendous amount of analysis that needs to be done and compiled. And the federal government doesn't allow you to just add a property without going through the full federal review process. And so it's critical that when we draw that line to stop, that everyone that wants to be engaged is engaged. But we do a kickoff, we do all the real estate technical things, the appraisal and title. There's something called duplication of benefits. If you have flood insurance, the federal government sees that you're getting flood insurance to fix up a structure, and then they're giving us federal dollars to buy and knock it down. So if you keep both, that's seen as basically a duplication of the benefit for that structure. So if your house is worth $300,000 and you got 100 in insurance claims, and you decided, I'm not going to fix it up, I'm going to go through the buyout, the federal government would allow you to keep that 100,000 as an advance. Our job through the appraisal process of showing your property's worth 300 would be to give you the remaining 200,000. So you would be whole. You would just get the insurance payment up front to keep as an advance. Now, if you spent 100,000 in structural repairs because you didn't have anywhere else to live, all we would ask to do is get those receipts. The federal government reviews those, and if they are approved, then when your property is valued at 300,000, we would give you a full 300,000. Okay, so whatever you get in for flood insurance for structural improvements have to be shown in receipts, or it has to be deducted off of that pre-storm appraised value that we give you. Once all of that is in, so that we know what to offer you, the federal government will always share national flood insurance claims once we open a grant. So that information is confidential. It's not operable. but we do get it, so they make sure that we're not double dipping and we are using federal dollars appropriately. So once we have that understood and approved by FEMA, we do a face-to-face meeting so you can ask questions. We share the appraisal reports. We let that soak in, and then a few days later, we put it formally in writing, and you get a 30-day turnaround. If you accept, we do a survey, go to contract, and schedule a closing. Our portion of the process, it takes about 3 months to write a grant. It takes about 4 months to get through the real estate portion of the project to make an offer to you. So that is pretty much the timeline it takes. Now, if you don't like the appraisal, you can appeal. You can go hire your own appraiser, send in that report based on the same scope of work. The state will pay for a third independent appraiser to take the first 2 reports, look at the 5 comps in ours, the 5 comps in yours, either use them or establish a brand new value. And that would be the final offer that we would be able to offer you for your home. Next slide.
Yep, and we're gonna move to that new link.
Okay.
So everyone that registered, apologize for the inconvenience, but everyone that registered should have received an email at this point with a new link. We're gonna hop over to that. We're gonna finish this presentation by Fawn, and then we're going to go into a question and answer session. And so I will get that meeting going up in just a sec. Thank you, everyone.